Well, hi everyone. I feel very privileged to be invited to speak today, and this is Misty who's joining me for my talk. Yeah, how do we achieve animal liberation? Well, that's not that's not a very big question, is it? Of course, it's the biggest question of all for all of us who care about animals and want them freed from tyranny and oppression. And I think, first of all, we've got to ask ourselves the question, what do we mean by animal liberation? Well, for me, animal liberation is a situation, a widespread situation where animals are freed from oppression by humans. Other animals, I mean, of course, because, of course, we humans are animals too, and we mustn't forget that. So what form does this oppression of other animals take? Well, the biggest area of oppression is really the food industry. We have a situation where 50,000 animals are slaughtered throughout the world every second to feed humans. And that also involves very often extreme suffering in the way the animals are reared, how they're caught, for instance, in the case of fishing, and also how they're slaughtered. And this is all totally unnecessary because, of course, we could all be vegan. And then I think coming fairly quite close behind that, as a second area of oppression of other animals, is the harm and the adverse impact done by humans to the natural environment. Things like the climate crisis, which already is killing millions of wild animals through destruction of their habitat and depletion of their food sources. And then we have other areas of harmful human impact on the environment, such as pollution, industrialization, our transport system, overpopulation, overconsumption, and the list goes on and on. And there are then other areas where animals are oppressed, such as animal experimentation, the fur trade, hunting, zoos and circuses, animal racing, and once again the list goes on. And it can seem this is a horrific edifice of oppression, a horrific edifice of slaughter and suffering, and it can be very easy to think that we can never topple it, that we could never win. But I believe we can. I believe we can achieve animal liberation if we go about it the right way. Because what we have to consider is what is the root cause of the oppression of other animals by humans? Well, that is that's speciesism, isn't it? That's human supremacism. That's the false notion, the irrational notion, the wrongful notion that humans are somehow superior to other animals, that somehow we're important than other animals. And of course, that that's total nonsense. But very sadly, most humans in the world believe that. And until we change that situation, until we can create a situation where a large number of people actually accept that speciesism is wrong, that human supremacism is wrong, then we're never going to achieve animal liberation. And so how do we do that? How do we change the attitudes of all those people? How do we change their mindsets? Well, for me, the way to do that is through vegan education, not just in terms of diet, but of course that's a very big part of it, but in terms of the overall philosophy of veganism, which is opposition to speciesism and opposition to human supremacism. But obviously starting with changing people's diet is very important, because for most people, that is by far the biggest way in which they are involved in the oppression of other animals through their consumption of animal products. So how do we do this education? How do you manage to educate a large number of people to go vegan? And the way we do that is through vegan outreach and through having vegan outreach everywhere, and for that to take place as often as possible. And so how do we create this situation where that happens? Well, at the moment, we have an increasing number of vegans throughout the world. But unfortunately, only a very, very small number of those vegans are activists. Only a very small number are actually taking the vegan message actively to members of the public. And that needs to change. We need a lot more vegans to become activists. But the most important thing of all is that we need a lot more vegan activists to become organisers of vegan outreach. Because at the moment, the situation with vegan outreach seems to be that it mainly takes place in the centre of big cities. People go from all around to the centre of a big city to carry out an outreach activity, and that's great. It's brilliant that those people are doing that and that they're active. But what we need is vegan education, not just in the centre of big cities. We need it in small cities, we need it in towns, and we need it in the suburbs of big cities. And so in order for that to take place, somebody needs to organise it. And what I would ask vegan activists to do is that instead of, or as well as, going into the centre of big cities to do activism, to think about organising activism where they actually live, to take the vegan message to people everywhere. And that doesn't need to involve a huge number of people. Somebody in the local area that could recruit maybe just another one or two other vegans to help them can really do a lot of activism, because it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be something as simple as delivering vegan leaflets to people's homes, to distributing leaflets in the street, to doing street stalls, to doing stalls at events. You don't need a huge number of people to do that. But what we do need is that activism to take place everywhere. Now, of course, we need a large number of people to go vegan. But I'm not naive enough to believe that everyone's going to go vegan. There are still going to be people that want to oppress other animals. There's still going to be people that refuse to withdraw from that oppression, people who still want to consume animal products, people who still want to have an adverse impact on the environment, for instance. So what do we do about those people? We can't just allow them to continue what they're doing. And the way to stop them, of course, is to have legislation that protects animals, to have legislation that promotes veganism. And we need to obviously have that at a national level, but we also have to have initiatives at local levels as well, through local authorities, to create that situation. And how do we get that? How do we get that legislation to protect animals? Well, that will come through politicians passing laws. And how do we get those politicians? Those politicians have to be elected. And where are those politicians elected from? Those politicians are elected in local areas, and it's the local people that vote for those politicians. So the more vegans we can create, the more vegans will become politicians. We'll have more vegan politicians who have the right attitudes, and we'll have to also have more people to vote for those politicians, so that those people then are able to create laws that protect other animals. So for two reasons, two very vital reasons, vegan education, vegan outreach in local areas is so important. to change people's behaviour so that the oppression of other animals is reduced through that, and also to change how people act politically, so that we can have administrations throughout the world who act to protect other animals. And so really what I'd say to everyone listening to this is that if you're not vegan, become vegan. That's the first thing. That's really important. If you're a vegan but not an activist, become an activist. And if you're an activist but not an organizer, become an organizer of vegan activism, and especially become an organizer of vegan activism in the area where you actually live. And if enough people do that, I think we can achieve animal liberation. Well, thank you. That's the end of my talk. I've kind of deliberately kept it short, so lots of people can ask questions, and I hope that a lot of people will.
And thank you very much, Ronnie. It was really interesting and inspiring to listen to your talk. I have one question for you. What do you think about activism done in the streets right now? For example, Anonymous for the Voiceless.
Well, I think all activism in the street is positive. And obviously, Anonymous for the Voiceless are part of that. I know there's been some, how can we say, some contentious issues about Anonymous for the Voiceless this past year. But I think it's true to say that they have encouraged people to become vegan. And I think, you know, overall, it's probably better that they're there than that they're not there. But I think one thing that tends to happen with AV is their actions tend to take place in the centre of big cities, and people are drawn to those actions for all around, because people don't really have to do very much to be part of those actions. People just have to, a lot of people stand there holding a computer or a screen. And I know there are other people that talk to people and give out information. But what we really need is those people that are going into those big cities to do these actions, to instead of being a passive person that's just standing there. What we need is for them to organise outreach in their local areas, so that education is taken everywhere. Because when I'm talking about organising local areas, I'm not just talking about doing stuff on the street, although that's very important. I'm talking about actually becoming involved in the local community and organising events where the local community are. And for instance, our local group where I live, I mean, our group covers 3 fairly small towns, and the total population is probably about 100,000. And we do action on the street, but we also hold information stalls at, for instance, dog rescue fundraising events where they hold an event in the park, and there are various stalls, and we'll have a stall there. We'll have stalls at community festivals, and we'll have stalls at environmental events that we have normally every year. We have 2 environmental fairs. They're indoor events with lots of stalls. We have a stall at those events. Wherever we can have a presence, we will, not just on the street, but at community events as well. And we do a lot of delivering leaflets to people's homes through their letterboxes, and sometimes, particularly coming up to Christmas, we'll distribute leaflets in the street to people about how they can, for instance, before Christmas, but how they can have a compassionate Christmas that doesn't involve eating turkeys and oppressing animals in other ways. So there's a whole range of activities that can be carried out at a local area, not just in the street. And we've kind of got to kind of think a little bit more broadly about where we can do our activism. You know, the street's a good place, but there are lots of other places as well. And in a local community, I've got a cat in front of my light. Yeah, in a local community, there are all sorts of those opportunities, and you don't need. People tend to think that we need loads of people all gathered together to do outreach, but you don't necessarily need that. I mean, 3 people can run an information stall. And three people can distribute leaflets. You don't need a huge number of people. You just need just a small number of committed people is enough. I mean, obviously, the more people you can get, the better. But don't worry about having a huge number. You don't do that. It's the kind of it's the amount of activism you do rather than the numbers.
Well, thank you. Cool T-shirt, by the way. We have questions. Ronnie, what about your local surroundings? How many vegans?
Well, it's hard to say because there's been various estimates of the number of vegans. I would say probably in our and it varies from country to country, and I think probably I would say in England now, the number of, I mean, as I say, out of the population of 100,000, the people that live in our area, we may have, I don't know, there would be several hundred vegans, and there may even be 500. It really depends. It depends on. There's been various opinion polls in the UK about the number of vegans, and they tend to vary. One was as high as 7%. I don't think it is that high, but there was one that said it was the number of vegans was 7%. But certainly that we would be out of that population of 100,000. There would be quite a few hundred vegans, but sadly very few of them are activists. You know, we only have maybe probably maybe a dozen activists, something like that, you know, and maybe a few more than that, people that occasionally take part in activism. But it's not a huge number out of the total number of vegans there are. And I think that's a problem worldwide. That's a problem everywhere. And it's really important that more vegans become active, because it's great that somebody becomes vegan. I mean, you know, for every person that consumes animal products, I'd say they would be responsible for the suffering and slaughter of at least 100 animals a year on average. So of course, if somebody becomes vegan, then that, you know, that ends the demand for that number of animals to be oppressed. But what about all the other people that aren't vegan? They're still carrying on consuming animal products. They're still carrying on causing all that suffering and slaughter. So we need to do something about those people. You know, if we really care about the animals, we really want to achieve animal liberation, it's not enough to just be vegans ourselves. We have to go out and educate as many people as possible to be vegans. And really, every vegan should do that. That's really should be an essential part of veganism, that we try to spread the message. And it's not difficult. People shouldn't think that activism is a difficult or a complicated thing. A person can be an activist on their own. You know, if they for some reason can't find other vegans who want to be active, or some people just like to do things on their own, and even on their own, a person can do a lot. They can, for instance, one thing I do is if I'm on public transport, I'm in a public place, I'll leave vegan leaflets there. You know, I'll put vegan leaflets inside, you know, relevant books in the library, or inside magazines in a supermarket, and anyone can do that. Any person can do that. Any person can deliver leaflets, you know, through to people's homes through the letterboxes. Anyone can do that. You don't need a big group of people to do that. So people on their own can do activism, but with a group of people, you can do more. Obviously, it's very difficult for one person on their own to do an information stall. And one thing we do a lot is giving away vegan food samples, samples of vegan cheese and other vegan products, sometimes stuff we've cooked ourselves, and we give people the recipes as well. And to do that, to do an information stall or particularly a food stall like that, you do need more than one person. You need probably 3 people to do that. But that's not a lot of people. That isn't a huge number. So we mustn't think it's difficult. We mustn't think it needs a lot of people, because it doesn't.
Okay, thanks. Another question from Eva. Thank you, Ronnie, for your work and talk. I was wondering if you are aware of the work of the Dutch Party for the Animals, largely vegan, quite successful, and similar forms of political organizing. Kim Stallwood, for example, always stresses the importance of activists influencing politicians.
Yes, I think it's vitally important. I think one hugely important thing, though, that we need to achieve if these parties are going to have more success, and even if some of the smaller parties, for instance, I'm a member of the Green Party, here in England, and the Green Party has by far the best policies for animal protection. They're not perfect, but they're far better than the other parties. But the Green Party only ever gets a small percentage of the vote, and that would be the same for all these other parties. These parties for animal protection, they only get a small percentage of the vote because people think, well, that those in our present electoral system, called the first past the post electoral system, which is, it may well be the same situation in Estonia. It is in most countries throughout the world. With that system, people are afraid that their vote will be wasted. If they vote for like a small party, then that vote will be wasted, and it would allow the very people they don't want to be elected to get elected. And so we need a really vital part of us, really making progress politically, is to have electoral reform. We need some sort of proportional representation or a transferable vote system, so these smaller parties have a much better chance of being elected. And also that's a far more democratic system anyway, because then people can vote who they really want to vote for. Because at the moment, what happens is people tend to vote against who they don't want, in power. They'll think, well, who's got the best chance of defeating the person I don't like, instead of voting for who they really want. And so that's really important. And yes, politics is vitally important, and it's really important for vegans to become politicians. I mean, I'm not a politician myself. I mean, I've helped vegan politicians. I've campaigned for them, but there obviously are some vegans were cut out to be politicians, and the more vegans we have, the more vegans there'll be who will be, that sort of person that wants to be a politician. And then, because we need good politicians, we've got so many terrible politicians at the moment, and so those need to be replaced by decent people. And if we can create more vegans, we've got a good chance of doing that.
And thanks. Another question from Faristamo. Do you think everyone can be an activist? It seems somehow that a lot of people think it makes others uncomfortable if they are actively trying to change the world. And as people, we kind of do not want to make others feel uncomfortable.
Well, I think we can do it. Activism can be done really in quite a gentle way that doesn't make people feel uncomfortable. I mean, for instance, if you're doing a store where you're giving out food samples, well, people are very keen to come up. You're giving them free food. It's not confrontational. Everyone's very friendly. You have to be friendly. Whatever you think of the people coming up to the store, you have to be friendly to them. If you're not friendly, then there's not much chance of them becoming vegan. So it needn't be. It's not an aggressive thing, and it can't be an aggressive thing. That'd be counterproductive. We need to present a friendly face to people and a welcoming face, and to be helpful to people who are interested. And a lot of people are interested these days in going vegan. And a lot of it's to do with the climate crisis. There's been a lot of publicity about how the consumption of animal products is so harmful to the environment, and so that's kind of created a lot of interest. And so it's not something I feel is off-putting to ordinary people if we do it the right way.
Okay, thanks. Another question from Tanel. Is promoting so-called baby steps and animal welfare as opposed to animal liberation actually speciesist? Should we ever water down the message of veganism?
No, we should never water down the message. I think we, and the other thing is that it's, I think welfareism is not a good use of our energy. For instance, if we're campaigning, say, for slightly larger cages for battery hens, or slightly better conditions for animals that are oppressed, right? It could be argued, well, that kind of it is slightly better for a hen to be in a larger cage, or for an animal to be in slightly better conditions. But the thing is that energy that's put into us campaigning for that could be put into campaigning for veganism, which would yield much better results. And so I'd say that the best use of anyone's energy is to actually campaign for veganism. And the other problem with welfareism is that it can make people think that it's still okay to consume animal products. I mean, there's a problem here with the RSPCA. The RSPCA over here have got a scheme called, I think it's called RSPCA approved. They keep changing the name of it. And basically what they do is they give animal farms, certain animal farms, a kind of seal of approval to say, well, you know, the animals in these farms are in better conditions than other farms, and so it's better for people to buy products from those farms. And the problem is that a lot of these farms, the conditions in them are still awful. There's been exposés of a few of these farms, and what's happening is people think, well, I can buy that meat because those animals are well treated in that farm. But the point is, you know, quite often they're not. But those animals are still going to be slaughtered. They're still going to be slaughtered at a fraction of their natural life, and it's all totally unnecessary because we could all be vegan. And so, in a sense, that campaign is counterproductive, because in a sense it actually discourages people from becoming vegan. So I think what we need to do, we need to concentrate on vegan education and not sway from that, because I think a very radical message can be put across in a gentle way. We can still be radical and put that message across in a way that people will understand and a way that people will accept.
Okay, thank you. Eva, would you like to talk?
Hi, Ronnie. Thank you very much for your talk and discussion. No, you already answered my question. I was just, because the Dutch Party for the Animals is really having a transformative effect, I think, not just on the Dutch because of their message, but also on the way that we are doing politics at the moment. But you already said it should go hand in hand with political reform, and a two-party system, or at least two big parties, is very difficult. But I think it's interesting because we are speaking to activists and effective forms of activism, and I've seen the Party for the Animals sort of rise in the past 10 years, becoming more explicit in their vegan message, becoming more explicit in their holistic view of society, which encompasses social justice for non-human animals, but also humans around the world. And it's just, I did not expect this, and the interesting thing is that they keep growing with each election, and basically forcing all the other parties to engage with these things because they keep raising the question. So it's more of a comment, and you already answered and said what I would say as well. So thanks a lot.
Yes, it is very important, and that is true. The other parties all the parties want to vote. So if they see that a policy from an animal protection party is popular, then they'll try to adopt that policy themselves because they want those votes. So it does kind of move the consensus. It does change what other parties are doing, and that's a good thing. Although it kind of sometimes looks like they're stealing votes away from the animal protection parties. It's nevertheless a kind of a positive thing. It moves politics in a positive direction.
Another question from Lumi. Thank you, Ronnie, for your talk and work. How do you see online activism compared to traditional street activism? Many organizers mainly do their work online at the moment, but do we still need street activism as well?
Yeah, we need all forms of activism. I think the difficulty with I think some online activism is that it ends up with vegans just talking to other vegans. That's the difficulty with online stuff. Not always, and I think there's a very important role for online activism. I mean, for instance, our local vegan group, when we went into lockdown just over a year ago, we were no longer able to do any sort of outside activity. And so we decided to start advertising on social media. We learned about how to advertise on social media, which is kind of it's a bit of a complicated process when you're advertising for what they call a social cause rather than advertising a business or something like that. But we managed to get it all sorted out, and we've run since then. We've run well over 30 social media advertising campaigns in our local area. And that's resulted in thousands of people visiting vegan websites. And because you're advertising, you have to pay for it, obviously, but because you're doing that advertising, then people get to see those posts. And it's mainly videos, we use short videos that seems to be the best way of spreading the message. All those loads of people who aren't vegans get to see those, because it's not just if someone puts a post on Facebook, it's generally just their friends that will see that, and often for vegans, most of their friends will be vegan. But doing it that way gets it out of what I call the vegan bubble, and so lots of other non-vegans see it, and I think that's very important. It's something we're going to continue even when COVID is gone and we're able to get back to normal, whenever that will be. Not that I want normal to be the same as what normal used to be. Let's hope that some things will be better, especially for other animals. But when we're able to get out and about as we were before, we're still going to carry on with this social media advertising, because it has been so positive. And I think we have to do all sorts of activism to reach as many people as possible. We have to do the street activism. We have to do activism at events, as well as activism on social media.
Thanks. Another question from Katrin. Thank you for being focused in such a way. What have you experienced? What has been most effective argument to reach people to become vegan?
I think it very much depends on the person that you're talking to. Different people are influenced by different arguments, and different people are influenced by different forms of activism, which is why we need like a really wide variety of activism and many different ways of spreading the message. But I think that you see, the thing is that most people care about animals in some other animals in some way, or they care about some other animals in some way. For instance, I mentioned that we do information stalls, usually where we give away vegan food samples at fundraising events for local animal rescues. These are usually dog rescues, where they'll have a fundraising event in a local park, and people attending those events are people that care about dogs. They care about dogs, so, and rescuing dogs. So at least they care about one animal. And so what you can do is you can use that to make a connection with other animals, to say, well, look, pigs aren't really any different to dogs. They're just as aware. They suffer just as much. So why do you love dogs and eat pigs or other animals? And so there's you kind of make that connection. I think most people don't think of themselves as cruel. Most people care about some animals, and I think we have to kind of just extend that. We have to extend that to all animals, and so that's a good way of kind of talking to people, I think.
Thank you. I have one question. I've seen a lot of vegan activists to like burnout. Do you have any kind of tips to avoid that?
Yes, I think that the activists often put themselves into very stressful and upsetting situations. And for instance, the Save movement is a prime example of that, where people are going outside slaughterhouses and witnessing animals going to their deaths, and in most cases not be able to stop that or do anything about it. And that must be, that's not something I would do. I wouldn't put myself through that. I don't see a need to do that to myself. Some people somehow feel a need to do that, and you know, there has been some positive things come from that. Videos have been taken, shared on social media, and I'm sure some people have become vegan because of those. So you know, it's not, you know, I'm not saying that's a negative thing, but that is, for people taking part, I would say, a very stressful experience, and something that can adversely affect their mental health, really. So I think what we have to do is kind of in a sense, find ways of dealing with that, find ways of actually enjoying being vegan in the company of other vegans, so that we kind of have a break from the, you know, all the negative images and all the, you know, all the negative things that we can experience. I mean, one thing we do locally, when you know, often when we've done an action, we've done outreach, you know, we've delivered leaflets or we've had a stall or something like that, we'll go to a local cafe. We try to go to one of the, we've got 2 vegan cafes locally, we try to go to one of those to support them, and we'll sit around and we'll talk and we'll laugh and joke and we'll have a good time. So what we try to do is kind of make the experience, in a sense, an enjoyable one for people. We'll say to people, you know, come and help us do this stall, or come and help us deliver these leaflets. Then afterwards, we'll all go to the cafe and, you know, we'll kind of, have a relaxing time from that. So, and I think it's kind of important to do that. It's important to have this kind of, you know, positive side to things for our own mental well-being. And that's what I'd say to people: try and incorporate, you know, be as active as you can in whatever way you feel you can best be an activist, but also enjoy the company of other vegans and do some pleasant things associated with veganism. Because otherwise, the thing is, it's really important that we keep going for a long time, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. That this is a long-term struggle. This isn't a struggle we're going to win overnight. This is a struggle that's already been going on for decades and decades. You know, in some areas we have made progress with it, but there's still a really, really long way to go. And so people have to be prepared to be in it for the long term. Not think that, and I think what happens with some young people coming into the movement, they think if they throw themselves into everything and maybe make a lot of noise, then things will change very quickly. But that isn't going to happen. Things aren't going to change quickly. You know, I think, you know, as I said, we can achieve animal liberation. We can do it, but it isn't going to come overnight. And so we have to be prepared for this to be a long struggle. And we have to, in a sense, pace ourselves so that we can keep going for many years, because you know, we need activists that can remain activists for many years, not people that just burn out, you know, after 2 years. And I've seen so many people burn out. They've thrown themselves into things, and it's kind of become overwhelmed, and then you never see them again. Well, it's far better for somebody to kind of take care of themselves a bit more and to be able to last and campaign for years. That they're far more effective in campaigning for animal liberation if they do that.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any questions? We have 4 minutes left.
Yeah. But it's something that we need to get this message out really all around the world about the importance of really all vegans becoming activists and the importance of people becoming organisers, because it doesn't matter how many people want to be active. We want all vegans to want to be active in whatever way they can, even in a small way, because what it is, it's to do with how we use our spare time. All of us have things we have to do in our lives. We have families, people have jobs, people have their own rescued animals that need to look after. You've probably seen some of our cats. They need to be fed and cared for, and that has to kind of come first before anything else. And there are all those things people have to do before they can really do anything else. But everyone has spare time. We don't all have the same amount of spare time, but everyone has spare time after they've done the things they have to do. And what really all vegans need to do is think, how can I use as much of my spare time to campaign for animals? Even if someone maybe had 2 hours a week and they did it, they did that, they used that in some way to promote veganism. If you added all those hours together that all vegans could contribute, it would be a massive, massive amount. So I'm not asking people to do something really massive. It's not asking people, it's just ask them to use some of their spare time to campaign for veganism. Everyone can do that. It's not difficult, and it all adds up. I mean, I like there's an ancient Chinese proverb that I really love, and it says it's better to light one small candle than to curse the darkness. In other words, it's better to do something, even if it's tiny, to fight animal oppression and to promote veganism. Even if it's a tiny thing, still do it, because if everyone lit a small candle, the darkness would be completely vanquished, wouldn't it? And this is the answer. We all need to do our bit. We all need to be part of this effort, to be part of this struggle, and we all can be. And then also we need people to be organisers, because it doesn't matter how many people want to be activists. If nobody organises the activity, then it's not going to take place. And so, as I said, we need more vegans to become activists, and we need more activists to become organiser. And we can do it. We've got to just keep going, keep going for it all the time. And one day, yeah, it could happen. We could have animal liberation.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Your speech was really powerful. I hope you stay with us. And if anyone has further questions, please ask them in the chat. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go in a minute because I've got to kind of do some. The cats need looking after, but I'll try to, if I can be back at some time today, then I will be. So, but okay. Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure speaking here, and it's great to see the conference taking place. Yeah, thank you.